Before this story begins, I want you to do one thing, just one. Drop whatever you are half thinking about right now, the list, the noise, whatever is sitting at the back of your mind. Put it down for a few minutes, because what I am about to tell you is worth your full attention. And when we reach the part that hits you, and there will be a part, I promise you that, I want you to drop one word in the comments, just one word, whatever you felt in that moment. That is all I need from you. Now, let me take you somewhere. The year is 2341. Humanity has been spacefaring for exactly 83 years. 83 years of rockets and stations and moon bases, and a single, fragile colony on Mars that everyone is very proud of and slightly terrified about. By the standards of the galaxy, we are newborn. We are the species that just learned to walk and immediately tried to run. We have been out here for less time than it takes some stars to complete a single rotation. We are, in every measurable sense, children. And then the Keth-Vora arrive. The Keth-Vora are not conquerors. That is the first thing you need to understand about them, because everything that follows depends on it. They do not arrive with weapons hot and flags flying. They arrive the way a scientist arrives at a specimen, methodically, professionally, with instruments rather than guns. They are the oldest survey civilization in the known galaxy, 90,000 years of continuous spacefaring. They have catalogued 11,047 species across 4 galactic arms. They have a classification system for everything. They have seen everything. They are, by any reasonable measure, completely impossible to surprise. Their lead analyst is called Vel-Karath. He has been doing this work for 300 years. 300 years of arriving at new star systems, scanning the local biology, assigning a number, filing a report, and moving on. In 3 centuries, he has never once requested an extension on a survey file. He has never once filed a priority alert to the High Council. He has never once written a personal note inside an official document. He is the most decorated surveyor in the history of the Keth-Vora Survey Division, and he is completely, professionally, absolutely certain that the 3rd planet of this unremarkable yellow star will take 4 of their cycles to assess, and approximately 10 minutes to classify. He is wrong. The first scans are, admittedly, unimpressive. Vel-Karath records this in his log with the quiet satisfaction of a man whose predictions are being confirmed. The dominant species is carbon-based, bipedal, short-lived, barely 80 of their solar rotations on average, which is, in galactic terms, almost comedically brief. Their technology is primitive. No energy shielding, no faster-than-light capability, no weapons that could threaten anything beyond their own atmosphere. Their biology is fragile, narrow temperature tolerance, no regeneration to speak of, no armor, no natural venom, no remarkable speed. By every metric the Keth-Vora Survey Division uses to assess galactic viability, these creatures rank somewhere in the lower third of all species ever encountered. Vel-Karath begins drafting the classification report. He expects to be done by morning. Then the anomalies begin. The first one is small, almost too small to note. During his review of the species' pain response data, standard procedure, filed under biological stress reactions, he notices something that does not match any of his 11,046 previous subjects. When a human experiences significant physical pain, the expected response is avoidance, retreat, cessation of the activity causing the pain. Every species he has ever surveyed responds this way, because this is what pain is for. Pain is the body's way of saying stop. It is one of the most elegant and universal evolutionary mechanisms in the known universe. Humans, apparently, did not get the memo. The data shows repeatedly across thousands of observed instances that humans experiencing significant pain frequently continue, not because their pain receptors are damaged, not because they lack the neural architecture to process the signal. They receive the signal clearly. They simply choose, in a measurable percentage of cases, to override it. Vel-Karath recalibrates his instruments. He runs the analysis 3 more times. The result is the same every time. He flags it as a biological irregularity, sets it aside, and moves on. He will return to this flag later. He does not know yet how many times he will return to it. The second anomaly arrives in his review of the species grief data. All social species form bonds. All social species experience something when those bonds are severed. This is not unusual. What Vel-Karath expects to find is a mourning period of predictable length, followed by behavioral return to baseline. What he finds instead is that humans do not return to baseline, not fully, not the way every other species does. They carry their dead with them, not the physical form. They handle that with careful ritual that itself fills an entire sub-file, but the presence of the person, the memory, the weight of who that person was and what they meant. Humans make decisions based on what a person who is no longer alive would have wanted. They change their behavior permanently in ways that can be traced directly back to someone who has been gone for years, sometimes decades. Vel-Karath creates a new classification category. He has not had to do this in 140 years. The third anomaly is the one that makes him request his first extension. He is reviewing what the humans do in their leisure time, the hours not dedicated to survival, and he finds something that stops him so completely that he sits with the data for an entire cycle before he can write a single word about it. The humans seek danger, voluntarily, not for resources, not for survival advantage, for the feeling. They build structures whose entire purpose is to allow them to fall from significant heights at significant speeds. They enter bodies of water inhabited by organisms that can kill them. They stand on the edges of their tallest cliffs not to observe the landscape, though they do that too, but to feel the nearness of the drop. When his translation systems ask several subjects why they do this, the word that comes back, again and again, is a word his translators render as excitement. He sends a query to his linguistic division asking whether excitement is a biological malfunction or an intended feature. He does not yet know that this question will define the rest of his career. He extends the survey by 10 cycles. He does not tell his supervisors why. In the cycles that follow, Vel-Karath does something he has not done in 300 years of survey work. He stops looking at the data from the outside and starts looking at it from the inside. He taps into their communication networks, a minor protocol violation that he notes in his log with unusual brevity, and he simply listens. He listens to them talk to each other, not to gather intelligence, not to assess threat capability. He listens the way you listen when something has surprised you, and you are trying to understand what surprised you about it. What he hears is not what he expected. He expected information exchange, resource negotiation, the kind of communication that every species engages in, the biological minimum of social coordination. What he finds instead is that the largest portion of human communication bandwidth, by a significant margin, is dedicated to something else entirely. They are telling each other how they feel, in elaborate, nuanced, carefully chosen detail. A human on one side of their planet is transmitting to a human on the other side, describing an experience his translators eventually render as loneliness, a form of pain caused not by physical damage but by the absence of connection. And the human on the other side is not offering a solution, is not providing resources or information or anything practically useful, is simply listening and saying, "I know, I felt this too." And then the first human reports feeling better. Not because the loneliness has been resolved, but because it has been shared. Vel-Karath sits with this for a long time. He has surveyed species that communicate through chemical signals, through electromagnetic pulse, through biological light display, through subsonic vibration. He has never surveyed a species that heals pain by sharing it. He has no framework for this. He creates one. The subfile runs to 40 pages before he realizes he has stopped writing a clinical assessment and started writing something closer to a personal account. He deletes 32 of the 40 pages and starts again. The second version is more professional. He is not sure it is more accurate. By cycle 18, Vel-Karath has requested 3 extensions, created 7 new classification categories, filed 1 priority alert to the High Council, and done something that no surveyor in the history of the Keth-Vora Survey Division has ever done. He has begun looking forward to the next cycle of observation. Not because the data is clinically interesting, because he genuinely wants to know what the humans do next. He recognizes this as a problem. He notes it in his private log. He does not stop. The history review is what finally breaks him. Every survey includes a full review of the species' historical conflict record. Vel-Karath has done this for 11,000 subjects. It usually takes 2 cycles. The human record takes 14. Not because it is unusually long, though it is, but because he keeps stopping. Because every time he thinks he has understood the pattern does something he did not anticipate. The humans have been at war in one form or another for the entirety of their record. History. This should, by every model the Keth-Vora survey division uses, have produced self-termination by now. It has not. What it has produced instead is something that takes Vel-Karath 4 rereads to fully accept. Every time the humans destroy something, they rebuild it, not to what it was, to something different, something that incorporates the damage as part of its new structure. They do not erase their wounds, they build with them. Every collapse in 6,000 years of human history has been followed, in a time that is, in galactic terms, almost embarrassingly short, by something new. Something that starts where the previous thing ended and goes further. The vector of human progress has never reversed. Vel-Karath checks this finding 4 times. He asks his junior analyst, observer Keth-Vora, to run an independent verification. She confirms it. They sit together in the observation bay for a long time without speaking. Then Vel-Karath says, "In 11,000 surveys, have you ever seen a species whose progress vector has never reversed?" And Keth-Vora says, "No." And Vel-Karath says, "Neither have I," and then neither of them says anything for another long while, looking at the data together in the particular silence of 2 professionals who have just encountered something they do not have a word for. It is Keth-Vora who eventually speaks. She says, "They are not what they appear to be." And Vel-Karath says, "No," she says, "they appear weak." He says, "Yes," she says, "they are not weak." And he says quietly the thing he has been working toward for 20 cycles of observation, "I am not sure they can be weak. I am not sure it is a state they are capable of maintaining. Every time they reach it, something in them refuses to stay there." The final entry in the official survey file is not a classification. It is a recommendation. 3 points, filed with the full authority of Vel-Karath's 300 years and 11,000 surveys behind it. Point 1. Do not interfere with human development. Point 2. Do not underestimate them based on their current technological level. Point 3. And this is the point that the High Council debates for 6 of their own cycles before reluctantly accepting. When they arrive at the galactic community, and they will arrive, do not treat them as a younger species asking permission. Treat them as what they are. A species that has been solving problems for 6,000 years and has not stopped yet. A species that carries its dead, overrides its pain, seeks out danger for the feeling of it, heals itself by sharing its wounds, and has never once, in the entirety of its recorded history, looked at an obstacle and decided to stop. The High Council asks Vel-Karath what threat classification he assigns. He tells them, "Insufficient category. I would need to create a new one, and I am not sure any classification I create will still be accurate by the time you read it. They change too fast. Every time I write something true about them, they become something the truth no longer fully covers." He retires from survey work the following cycle. After 300 years, 11,000 species, and 1 survey file he never managed to close. The file on humanity remains open in the Keth-Vora archive to this day. Active status. No classification. No archive date. Every few decades, a junior analyst asks whether it should be updated. Every few decades, the answer is the same. Yes, probably. But whoever takes it on should know what they are getting into. The last analyst who touched it ended his 300-year career unable to write a final line. Not because he ran out of things to say, because the subject kept giving him more. Here is what Vel-Karath understood by the end, that he could not put in the official file. He understood that what makes humanity dangerous is not their weapons or their numbers or their technology, all of which are, by galactic standards, still modest. What makes them dangerous is the thing underneath all of that. The thing that makes them override pain, carry their dead, build on their ruins, seek out danger for the feeling of it. The thing that makes a species which has every biological reason to have quit 1,000 times over still here, still building, still accelerating. He did not have a word for it in his language. The humans do. They call it will. And in 300 years and 11,000 species, he had never encountered anything quite like it. The galaxy has seen stronger species. It has seen smarter species. It has seen species with better biology, longer lives, more advanced technology at comparable stages of development. It has never seen a species that simply refused, with such consistent and unreasonable stubbornness, to accept the limits it was given. Vel-Karath wrote, in the very last personal note ever added to the file, I came to assess them. I leave having been assessed. Whatever they become out here, the galaxy will not be the same. Me for it, I am not sure whether that is a warning or a promise. I have decided after 22 cycles that it might be both. He pulls up their military history first. This is standard procedure. Conflict capability is always assessed before cultural data, because a species that is actively dangerous requires a different kind of report than one that is merely interesting. What he expects to find is the usual profile. A period of intense internal conflict during early civilization, gradual consolidation as dominant powers absorb smaller ones, eventual stabilization into a small number of major political units, and then the slow settling into the kind of territorial equilibrium that most civilized species eventually reach. He has seen this exact arc, with minor variations, in roughly 60% of all social species he has ever assessed. It is almost comforting in its predictability. What he finds instead is something that he reads 3 times before he accepts that his instruments are not malfunctioning. The humans have not stabilized. They are, at the time of his survey, operating over 200 separate political entities with independent governance structures, independent military capabilities, and a history of conflict between them so extensive that simply cataloging it fills 11 subfiles. And yet, and this is the part that requires the 3 rereads, they are also more technologically advanced, more economically interconnected, and more collectively capable than at any prior point in their history. They are simultaneously more divided than any stable species he has ever observed and more functional than the division should allow. He does not have a category for this. He files it under ongoing anomaly and keeps reading, which is something he has not done with an anomaly in over a century. Usually, he files them and moves on. This time, he moves deeper. The economic data is next, and it produces its own set of surprises. The Keth-Vora survey division has a standard model for predicting species economic development based on resource availability, population density, and technological level. It is a good model. It has been accurate for the majority of species surveyed. For the humans, it is wrong by a factor of 3. They have produced significantly more economic output than the model predicts, and the reason, when Vel-Karath finally isolates it, is something so straightforward he almost misses it in his search for a more complex explanation. They trade, not just resources, which all species do, but ideas, techniques, solutions to problems. A discovery made in one part of their world is transmitted, analyzed, improved upon, and applied in a completely different part of the world within a time frame that, in his experience, is essentially instantaneous. Knowledge compounds across their entire civilization simultaneously. Every human who solves a problem makes it easier for every other human to solve the next problem. He notes this. He notes that it means the rate of their development is not linear but exponential. He notes that this has significant implications. He does not yet know how significant. The medical data requires its own subfile, and produces its own set of moments where Vel-Karath has to stop and recalibrate his priors. In the span of a single century, 100 of their solar rotations, which is, in galactic survey terms, a rounding error, the humans have extended their average lifespan by 40 years, eliminated dozens of diseases that were previously killing millions of them annually, and developed the ability to repair and replace biological components that in any other species would represent permanent functional loss. They did this through the same mechanism he has been observing everywhere: relentless, compounding, cross-civilization knowledge accumulation. Every discovery built on the previous. Every failure analyzed and incorporated into the next attempt. Every researcher standing on the shoulders of every researcher who came before. He notes that at their current rate of medical advancement, their effective lifespan will double again within 2 centuries. He notes that a species whose members live twice as long has twice as much time to accumulate and apply knowledge. He notes that this produces implications that are difficult to model with any precision because the compounding effects are not linear and the endpoint is not visible from his current vantage point. In Cycle 15, Vel-Karath makes a decision that he will later describe in his retirement remarks as the most professionally significant choice of his career. He stops trying to predict what the humans will do next and starts simply watching what they do. This sounds like a small change. It is not. Prediction requires a model, and a model requires categories, and categories require that the thing being categorized hold still long enough to be measured. The humans do not hold still. Every time he builds a model, the data has moved. Every time he writes a conclusion, a new development makes the conclusion incomplete. He spends a full cycle trying to write a single paragraph summarizing human technological trajectory, and rewrites it 11 times as the trajectory shifts beneath his analysis. Eventually, he stops trying to summarize and starts trying to simply observe. What he observes, without the distorting lens of his prediction models, is something he has no professional framework for and no prior experience of. He observes a species in motion, not moving toward a fixed destination, moving because motion is what they are, because something in their fundamental nature will not allow them to stop. He watches them handle failure, and this is, of all the things he observes, the one that stays with him longest. He has a standard model for failure response in social species. Species that encounter repeated failure in a given domain will, above a certain threshold of failure, redirect resources toward more achievable goals. This is rational. This is, in his experience, universal. The humans encounter repeated failure in a given domain and analyze it. In obsessive, systematic, institutionalized detail, they have entire academic disciplines devoted to the study of what went wrong. They write papers about their failures. They teach their failures in schools. They build museums commemorating their greatest disasters so that future generations can understand exactly what not to do. He observes a major aerospace failure, a catastrophic loss of crew and vehicle, and watches the institutional response. He expects, based on every prior model, a significant reduction in program activity followed by a prolonged recovery period. What he observes is a 2-year pause followed by a return to operations with modifications based directly on the failure analysis. They turn the disaster into data, and then they use the data. Dathsena enters his observation bay on Cycle 17 and finds him watching a human cultural transmission, what they call a film, a recorded narrative created for entertainment instead of his survey instruments. She does not comment on this. She sits down next to him and watches for a while. The film is about a group of humans attempting something that all available evidence suggests cannot succeed. They encounter every obstacle the scenario can produce. They lose people. They lose equipment. They lose time. At every point where a rational assessment of the situation would recommend abandonment, they do not abandon. They adapt. They improvise. They find resources where none were indicated in the original plan, and then they succeed. Not cleanly, not elegantly, not without cost, but they succeed. Dathsena watches this and says quietly that it is fiction. Vel-Karath says yes, she says, but the pattern it describes is real. He says that is why they keep making stories about it. They are not describing what they can do. They are reminding themselves of what they are capable of. She is quiet for a while. Then she says, that is a very strange thing for a species to need to do. And he says, I know. I have been trying to understand it for 17 cycles. And she says, have you? And he says, no. But I think I understand why they need to. Because the thing they are reminding themselves of is not comfortable to hold onto without reminders. It is easier to stop than to continue. They know this. So they build the reminders into their culture, into their stories, into the things they tell their children. Keep going. It is worth it. You are capable of more than you think. They have been telling each other this for 6,000 years. The cultural data subfile eventually runs to 114 pages. Vel-Karath notes, in his private log, that this is the longest cultural subfile he has produced in 300 years of survey work. He notes that the previous record holder was a species that had developed a civilization spanning 3 planetary bodies and had been spacefaring for 4,000 years at the time of survey. He notes that the humans have been spacefaring for 83. He notes that he finds this difficult to contextualize using any of his existing frameworks, and that he has stopped trying to do so, and has instead simply begun documenting what he observes without attempting to fit it into any prior category. He notes that this approach, documenting without categorizing, is the opposite of what survey work is supposed to involve. He notes that he is doing it anyway. There is a particular human behavior that Vel-Karath returns to repeatedly in his private logs, even though it never makes it into the official file in a form he feels adequately represents what he is trying to say. It is the behavior of human individuals in the face of their own mortality. Every species he has ever surveyed responds to the knowledge of individual death in one of a small number of predictable ways. Some develop sophisticated denial mechanisms. Some develop elaborate afterlife mythologies. Some develop philosophical frameworks for accepting death as natural and proceeding regardless. All of these responses are, in their way, about managing the psychological cost of knowing that you will cease to exist. The humans do all of these things, but they also do something else, something that he has no prior data on. Knowing that they will die, they create things intended to outlast them. Not offspring, all species do that, and it is biological, not philosophical. They create objects, texts, music, art, structures, institutions, systems of knowledge, things that will continue to exist and to function and to influence the world after the individual who made them is gone. They extend themselves into the future through their creations. A human who has been dead for 3,000 years still influences the behavior of humans alive today, through texts that were written, through ideas that were developed, through systems that were built. Vel-Karath spends a long time trying to write a clinical description of this. Eventually, he deletes everything he has written and replaces it with a single line. They do not accept that death ends their contribution. This is not biologically rational. It may be the most important thing about them. What Vel-Karath eventually told the High Council when they pressed him for a threat rating was this: asking me to give you a threat rating for the humans is like asking someone to give you a weather forecast for a storm that is still forming. I can tell you what I see right now. I can tell you what the patterns suggest. But the honest answer, the only honest answer, is that whatever they are becoming, they are not finished becoming it. And a species that is not finished becoming something is a species that cannot be fully assessed at any point in time. You can only observe the direction. And the direction, in every domain I have examined across every cycle of survey, has been the same. Forward. Always forward. Faster than the previous cycle. More capable than the previous generation. More connected, more knowledgeable, more determined. More willing to take the next step toward whatever is on the other side of the horizon. I cannot give you a threat rating for something that is still accelerating. What I can tell you is that in 11,000 surveys, nothing has ever accelerated like this. And I think you should pay attention to that. The High Council paid attention. Quietly, without announcement, without any formal change in their official policies, they began watching. Not with the instruments of survey. Vel-Karath had left those running on automated collection, and they would continue to run for centuries, but with the particular kind of attention that very old and very powerful civilizations reserve for things that surprise them. The Keth-Vora had not been surprised in a long time. They found, to their own considerable discomfort, that they could not look away. The humans had that effect, even on beings who had seen everything, especially on beings who had seen everything, because beings who have seen everything recognize, immediately and without question, the rare and slightly terrifying sight of something genuinely new. In Cycle 19, Vel-Karath begins a project that he has never undertaken in his career and that he suspects, if discovered, would result in a formal review of his professional standing. He begins learning the human language, not using the translation systems. Those have been running continuously since he arrived and work well enough for survey purposes. Learning it, the way a student learns, reading their texts in the original form, listening to their speech without the mediating layer of automated translation, sitting with words he does not understand yet and looking for their meaning in context, the way a child looks for meaning before they have been taught the rules. He does this because he has become aware, over 19 cycles of observation, that the translation systems are missing something. Not the words, those they capture well enough. The thing underneath the words. The weight of what is being said and why, and what it costs the speaker to say it. That, he suspects, requires something closer to understanding than translation. It requires, in a word he does not yet have in his own language but which he will later identify in theirs, empathy. The capacity to hold another mind's experience as something real and immediate rather than as data to be processed. He is not sure he succeeds. He is not sure it is possible for a being of his particular cognitive architecture to fully achieve what he is attempting, but he gets further than he expects, and what he finds in the human language itself is another layer of the thing that has been surprising him for 19 cycles. Their language is alive in a way that his is not. It grows. It absorbs words from other languages. It creates new words when new things need naming. It changes faster than any official body can track or regulate. Every generation speaks slightly differently from the previous. Every region has its own variations. And yet, across all of these variations, across hundreds of different dialects and accents and regional vocabularies, they understand each other. They have built, inside the medium of their language itself, the same compounding cross-civilizational knowledge network he observed in their science and economics and technology. Language, for them, is not a fixed system. It is a living one. It evolves in real time. He spends 2 cycles just on this. He produces a sub-file. The sub-file is 60 pages, and he is not confident it adequately covers the subject. What he notes, in the 63rd page of that sub-file, is something so simple that he almost misses it in his search for more complex explanations. The humans have a word for the feeling of being unable to describe something. They call it ineffable. They have another word for the feeling you get when you find exactly the right word for something you have been trying to say. They call it articulate. They have a word for the particular sadness of a place that you loved that no longer exists. They have a word for the urge to read the messages of a dead person. They have a word for the kind of love that has lasted so long it has become indistinguishable from habit. They have, in short, named thousands of experiences that most species do not name because most species do not notice them with sufficient specificity to feel the need to name them. They notice everything. They name what they notice. And the act of naming, of taking the shapeless interior experience and giving it a form that can be transmitted to another mind, is itself an act of bridge building. An act of saying, "This is real, I am real, the thing I am experiencing is real, and it can be shared." Vel-Karath writes in his private log on Cycle 21, "I have been trying for 3 cycles to write a sentence that adequately explains what the humans are. I have not succeeded. Every sentence I write is accurate but incomplete. They are young species, true, but incomplete. They are a violent species, true but incomplete. They are an unusually creative species, true but incomplete. They are a species in rapid development, true but incomplete. The reason every sentence is incomplete is that the humans are not, in fact, a fixed thing that can be captured in a sentence. They are a process, a direction, a tendency, an acceleration. Whatever they are right now is already slightly less than what they will be in 10 cycles, which will already be slightly less than what they will be in 50. I have been trying to describe a river by writing down the position of the water, but the position changes. That is the point. The position is always changing. The river is not the position of the water. The river is the movement. He submits his final recommendation to the High Council in Cycle 22. He drafts it 11 times. The first 10 drafts attempt to explain, in the clinical language of Keth-Vora survey methodology, what he has found and what he thinks should be done about it. The 11th draft abandons the clinical language entirely. He writes it the way the humans write their important things, directly, personally, with the full weight of what he has experienced rather than the careful modulation of what he can prove. He writes, "I have spent 300 years looking at the universe through a lens of classification. I have believed, and I have been largely correct to believe, that the universe presents itself in patterns that can be named. Species are this or that. Civilizations develop along predictable arcs. Threats are measurable. Potential is calculable. The humans have not broken my methodology. They have revealed its limits. They are not unclassifiable because they are too complex to classify. They are unclassifiable because classification assumes that the thing being classified is finished. The humans are not finished. They may never be finished. And a species that is never finished becoming what it is cannot be assessed by any tool designed to measure what things are. It can only be watched, and it should be watched. Because whatever they are becoming, it will matter. It already matters. It mattered the moment they looked at the stars and decided to go there. And it will keep mattering for longer than I will be alive to observe it." He steps down from active survey work and recommends that the human file be assigned to a rotating team of junior analysts rather than a single senior observer. His reasoning, in the official record, is that a rotating team provides better coverage and reduces observer bias. The reasoning in his private log is different. He writes, "I cannot assign this to a single analyst because whatever analyst takes it will be changed by I. I was changed by it. 22 cycles of watching something that genuinely surprised me, after 3 centuries of being unsurprisable, has produced changes in my thinking that I am still in the process of understanding. I cannot, in good conscience, ask a junior analyst to take that on alone. The humans have that effect. They get inside you. You start watching them, and somewhere in the middle of watching you realize you have started asking questions you had stopped asking a very long time ago. Questions about what is possible, about what progress means, about whether the things you have decided are fixed might actually be capable of movement if something pushed them hard enough. I do not know if those are good questions for a surveyor to be asking. I know that I cannot stop asking them. And I know that whatever species is responsible for making a 300-year veteran of galactic survey unable to stop asking questions is a species that the galaxy needs to understand. There is something Vel-Karath observes in Cycle 20 that does not fit anywhere in the official file, and that he includes in his private log with the note that he is not certain whether it is survey data or something else entirely. He is watching a human family, a small group, 3 generations in the same dwelling, during what they mark as a significant shared occasion. There is food prepared with evident care. There is something the translation systems identify as music playing from a small device in the corner of the room. The oldest member of the family, a woman whose biological age his instruments estimate at approximately 80 years, which is near the upper limit of human lifespan, is sitting in a particular chair in a way that suggests the chair is hers by long-established custom rather than by instruction. The youngest member, an infant, perhaps 18 of their months, which places this human at the stage where they are still learning to walk and to form their first words, is in the oldest woman's arms. And what Vel-Karath observes, For a duration he does not record because he suspects the duration would raise questions about what he is doing and why is this. The oldest human is talking to the youngest, not in language the youngest can understand, not transmitting information, simply talking. In a low, steady voice, with an expression that his emotion recognition systems identify as a combination of categories that no prior subject has produced simultaneously: grief and contentment and love, and something that might be the awareness of time passing and the acceptance of that passing all at once. He watches this for a long time. He does not write a clinical description of it. He writes simply, "They know they are temporary. They love each other anyway. Perhaps they love each other because of it." I do not have a framework for this, but I believe it matters more than anything else I have documented. The infant, for its part, is watching the old woman's face with the absolute, unblinking attention of a creature that has not yet learned what things are worth attending to, and therefore attends to everything with equal intensity. The old woman says something. The infant reaches up one small hand and puts it against the woman's cheek. The old woman stops talking. For a moment there is just the music from the corner device and the two of them, 80 years of living and 18 months of existing, looking at each other with the same quality of attention. Then the old woman smiles. The infant, apparently deciding that this is the correct response to whatever has just passed between them, smiles too. Vel-Karath notes in his private log that his translation systems cannot tell him what passed between them because it was not in words. He notes that this is not, as he initially assumed, a limitation of his translation systems. It is a feature of the exchange. Some things the humans communicate cannot be translated because they are not in language. They are in presence, in attention, in the simple fact of being in the same room, in the same moment, and choosing to look at each other rather than at anything else. He notes that this may be the most advanced form of communication he has ever observed. He notes that he cannot prove this and would not include it in the official file. He notes it anyway. The High Council receives Vel-Karath's final report on a cycle that is, by coincidence, the same cycle in which a human aerospace agency successfully lands an unmanned vehicle on a planetary body in the outer reaches of their system. A mission that, when he checked the mission planning files, had been in development for 11 years, and had encountered every manner of technical problem that should have ended it. The Council reads his report. They discuss it. They do not, in the end, change any of their official policies. They do not make any formal announcements. They do what ancient and powerful civilizations do when they encounter something that genuinely surprises them. They watch, quietly, and they wait, and they wonder. The human vehicle on the outer planetary body sends back images. The images show a landscape that has not been seen by any eye, human, Keth-Vora, or otherwise, in the history of anyone keeping records. And somewhere on the third planet of the unremarkable yellow star, in research facilities and government offices, and the kind of informal gatherings that humans hold to mark occasions that matter to them, other humans look at those images and feel something that their language would call wonder. Vel-Karath, retired, watching from a distance he has maintained ever since he filed his final report, notes this in his private log. He writes, "They look at the universe the way they looked at each other in that room. With complete attention, as though what they are seeing is worth the full weight of their presence, as though the next image, the next discovery, the next thing they do not yet know, is the most important thing. And maybe it is. Maybe that is what a species looks like when it is becoming something the galaxy has not seen before. Maybe that is what we were like once, before we knew everything. Maybe the most dangerous thing about the humans is not what they will do when they arrive at our door. Maybe it is what we will feel when they do. Maybe we will feel what Vel-Karath felt, watching them for 22 cycles. Maybe we will feel something we stopped feeling so long ago we forgot it had a name. Maybe we will feel curious again. Vel-Karath lives for another 120 years after his retirement. He does not return to active survey work. He does not take on another file. He spends those 120 years reading human texts mostly in the original language, which by the end of his life he has developed enough fluency in to no longer require the translation systems for most purposes. He reads their history, their science, their philosophy, their fiction, which takes him the longest to understand and which he eventually decides is the most important category of all, because fiction is where a species reveals not what it is, but what it is trying to become, and the gap between those two things is the most interesting territory in any species' existence. He reads their arguments, their letters, the private correspondence of people who had no idea anyone would ever read what they were writing. He reads, in the last year of his life, a letter written by a human scientist to a junior colleague on the occasion of the junior colleague's first major failure. The letter says, among other things, failure is not the opposite of progress. Failure is progress. It is the mechanism by which the universe tells you that you have not yet found the right approach, which means the right approach still exists, which means you still have something to find. The letter was written 200 years before Vel-Karath was born. He reads it 3 times. He copies it into his private log with a note that simply says, "This is why. This is the thing I spent 22 cycles trying to name. This is what I could not put in the official file." They understand that the universe is not withholding success from them. It is withholding only their current approach. And so they try another, and another, and another, until the universe runs out of ways to say no. They do not stop. They cannot stop. It is not in them to stop. And that specific quality, that specific stubbornness, that specific refusal to accept the universe's first answer as its final one, is the thing that no threat classification in the Keth-Vora survey division's history has ever accounted for. Because it is not a threat. It is something older and stranger and more important than a threat. It is the thing that causes civilizations, when they are very lucky and very determined and willing to pay the full cost of what they are reaching for, to become something the galaxy has not seen before. Vel-Karath writes in the last entry of his private log 3 words. He writes, "Watch the humans." Then he closes the log. Then he dies. His private log is found by his successor, who reads the last entry and does not understand it yet because she has not spent 22 cycles watching the 3rd planet of the unremarkable yellow star. She will. The file is still open. The file is always open. That is the point. That word I asked you to drop at the beginning, I am still waiting. Whatever hit you in this story, drop it below. 1 word. Let me know what it did to you. The next episode is nothing like this one. Different format, different voice, different angle entirely, because that is the point. Every story on this channel is its own thing. Subscribe to UG Human HFY. You will not want to miss what comes next.